Hey everyone, and welcome to Pixel Theater! We are here for another episode, another fantastic voyage into the world of video game adaptations, and just, sometimes I think we might do some, just regular video games. This is the third or so episode of our rebooted podcast. New format, same people. We're going to figure out if the format was the problem or if it was us. And if it was us, too bad, you're stuck with us. My name is Nick Noel. I am one of your hosts, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host.
Player 2, Ron, has entered the fight.
There we go. So, Ron, today we are going to be talking about a fun little movie called Street Fighter 2, the animated movie. Is that what it's called? Right?
That's what it's called.
So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, this is Pixel Theater. It is a podcast, and we talk about video game movies, a much maligned and often derided, and usually justifiably so, genre. So why do we do this? I'll tell you why. One, it's fun. It's fun to watch goofy movies. And two, I do find it interesting, the experience of translation. In the older format, when we were talking about Spirits Within, that is a study in mistranslation. Just nobody on that team being able to talk to each other, nobody in the cast being able to talk to each other.
What the fuck are you saying?
The performances being done by 3 to 17 different people, depending on how you want to classify the animations. And so I find it very fascinating to see when a creative work is translated to other medium, and so that's part of the reason we talk about it. Ron, did you have anything to add before we go into the lobby?
Well, you just reminded me. I was going to say, is this our first animated tackle of a video game adaptation? But no, that would be the Final Fantasies. Is this the first traditional animation we've watched on the series?
I think it has to be, yeah.
I think
we haven't done any of the Pokemon yet, so I think it's got to be this
one.
one.
Pokemon and Castlevania are next up on our slew, spoiler alert. And so I think this is the first animated. And it's very interesting. We'll get into my thoughts during the feature presentation. But I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it. A phrase that has almost never been said on this podcast. So buckle in, everybody. You're in for a ride.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Okay, so this is the lobby where we're just going to kind of hang out, talk about whatever. So, Ron, what have you been doing since we last spoke?
Oh, let's see. Not much. I don't really have a lot to talk about. We're starting to see a slew of what 2021's blockbuster season is going to look like as far as movies. And It's very odd because, movies are coming out and people are venturing out to the theaters, but the world's still on fire. So it's kind of a weird thing. But I just watched Kong vs. Godzilla. And a few of my friends have seen it in the theaters, and I'm really glad I watched it at home. That way.
I think it's interesting looking at the box office receipts and being like, wow, this would be really amazing numbers for 1977. That's some amazing.
Well, 1976, because by 77 when was Jaws? 75?
Ron, I don't need a history lesson. I was just making a joke, okay?
Okay. Well, no, but it's a good point you made, though, because, Jaws ushered in the blockbusters. So before Jaws, the numbers may be comparable to what's happening now.
Just to, you're gonna talk history, so am I. I mean, those numbers it was interesting because those box offices were done over a long period of time. There was more consistency. And I think the last one to really do that was maybe Titanic. And now everything is just, you got to make your $1 billion in the first 3 weeks or else you're screwed.
It's weird. Well, we're ping-ponging Avatar Marvel's Endgame right now. They ran their course, but it's we're just going to put it back in theaters and count it towards its gross again. Which you're right. The last movie to really play around with that was Titanic. Titanic was the last movie I remember being it's just going to play in theaters for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking that was really strange. But I mean, it was a phenomenon. I watched it. I had the VHS double package box set and wept at Leo not being able to climb on a door for reasons.
That is just dogged James Cameron his entire career, or his entire career since Titanic. And I think he's even had to like show like it's not just the size, it's the weight distribution. The thing would sink, okay? Like
I always say
he's
that.
had to like talk about it. It's like so much to the point of like I can see why he has just decided to make Avatar for the rest of his life and not talk to anybody.
We're gonna have to cover those. I mean, we don't have to, but that's gonna be the only movies coming out. It will be Avatar 2, 4, 3, 5, 9, and 6, and 14. Leonard Part 6, Avatar edition.
Just all other movies will just be subsumed by the Avatar universe, where it's just going to be Kate Hudson and I was going to say and Matthew McConaughey, but that was like 15 years ago when they were in romantic comedies. I don't even know who's in. They don't make romantic comedies anymore, so I don't know.
They don't. No.
That's a bummer.
It's
who's in movies anymore? You ever try and think of like who's big? I don't know. The only thing that comes to mind is Channing Tatum, and that was still probably 5 years ago.
Classic movie stars anymore, man. Like it's Jason Statham's the closest I could think of for like a Schwarzenegger type, and that's not really the same thing. I mean, The Rock.
The Rock is really the Dwayne Johnson is I think the only one I can think of that has that kind of star pull, where it's just like you see a movie because Dwayne Johnson's in it.
Yeah,
for the most part. But yeah, like all the other ones are like from maybe like 10, 15 years ago. You know, you're still thinking like Will Smith, George Clooney, Brad Pitt, like they're waning.
Will Smith used to be a guaranteed July box office. Like people didn't release movies around the 4th because he owned that until Wild Wild West, and that just kind of bombed. But I don't think they were expecting that to bomb. But after that, it's kind of, you saw less and less of him leading the summer tentpole movies. I don't know. It's weird. I'm riffing off of another podcast, but somebody brought up a good point that like Jurassic Park kind of ended an era, and like Independence Day started a new era of like really dumb blockbuster movies. That just kind of went on loud noises and it didn't really matter what was happening. Kind of entertainment.
I think ID4 walked so Fast and the Furious could run.
Perfect. Yeah. But there's movies I want to see. I mean, King Kong, I'm a diehard Godzilla fan, but that movie did nothing for me. I have a lot of, the script is terrible. We've covered movies in this run that are better than that was screenplay wise. But like Mortal Kombat's gonna be out in a couple of weeks, and we're gonna have to cover it on the show. I don't want to say I'm really excited, but I am really excited. It has so much potential to deliver for me. I hope we get something good. It looks like they're really trying, so we'll see.
Exciting.
And then we'll probably have Black Widow, but that's going to be another one that we could watch at home too. Like it's a really weird movie year, but I feel like the light's at the end of the tunnel. Like people are getting vaccinated, people are going out to theaters. The theaters kind of are figuring out a way to be safe about it, but I'm just not comfortable yet. I don't know. Mortal Kombat, I might try to do a matinee in like a scuba outfit or a beekeeper suit, but I don't know. I'm going to feel really stupid laying in a hospital bed on a ventilator going, boy, that movie was worth it.
Yeah. That's kind of what we talked about on our Monster Hunter episode. It's just like, really? People are going to the theater for Monster Hunter? That's, to each their own, I suppose. There's a historic theater in, I want to say Howell, that one of my friends owns. And they let you rent out the screen for like a certain amount of money per person, basically. And you can just watch whatever you want. So I'm definitely thinking I'm going to do that once my friends are all vaccinated. I think that's going to be a good time.
Yeah, I get my second shot next week, and my buddy Lou and I were talking about that. Like, if we can get 4 of us all vaccinated together, we might, because the Royal Oak Imagine here rents the theaters out too. I'd be willing to do that, like 4, 6 of us, in a spaced out theater. That could be fun. But yeah, the norm for movies will be a couple of years yet,
Yeah.
at least for me.
So the Kong versus Godzilla, that's a no-go? You didn't enjoy it at all?
It's worth it. I enjoyed it for the dumb entertainment of them punching each other. It was really creatively done because it's in Hong Kong and there's like really colorful lights, and I've got the Philips Hue stuff, so like everything in my apartment is in sync with it. So my eyes glazed over. I was like, "Ooh, cool!" But there's all this. It falls apart because there's supposed to be this new Godzilla universe that started with 2014's Godzillaverse, yeah, the MonsterVerse, I think they're calling it. So you've got Godzilla 2014, you've got Kong, Skull Island, you've got King of the Monsters, then this one, and everything's been grounded in a sort of reality. Especially,
I didn't even know those movies were supposed to be connected.
They're all supposed to be connected. Yeah.
Okay.
They're trying. They really spitball. Well, it was the end of Skull Island where they showed a cave painting of Godzilla, and they're like, "Yeah, you want this? Spend money. We'll make that happen." And that was the only real loose connection to anything. And then they've kind of shoehorned everything since then. But no, it's very realistic, a very military grounded movie with Bryan Cranston facing off against Godzilla and Ken Watanabe saying, "Let them fight." But now this one's got hovercrafts and sci-fi, and they email an energy source to the bad guys. They find it in Hollow Earth, which is filled with sunlight for some reason. I felt my nose bleeding throughout the entire movie. It was really bad script.
So Bryan Cranston's in this one too?
Okay. No.
Oh no, you were talking about the other one. Okay.
Yeah, the other one I've got issues with, but after this, that's like Citizen Kane. I mean, that's the mistakes in that. My problem with that one is it does such a good job of establishing scale and feeling like, oh my God, Godzilla's coming. You see him step into the flames, and you're like, yes, this is it. And then you see the fight start over a character's shoulder in a bar on CNN. And it was just this wet fart letting out the air out of the balloon. I get what he was going for, and it's really clever. It pissed me off. I didn't appreciate it. I might appreciate it more now, but sitting in the theater in IMAX was high on popcorn and Coke. I wanted more than that. And but it had some cool. It did end up delivering on being a neat face-off, and then it was over. It was like, oh, I want more. And the more that we eventually got was just so dumb. If you want a Godzilla movie, my personal favorite of the last 10 years is Shin Godzilla. It's Japan's reboot, and I think it's spectacular. It's satire. It makes fun of how inept the government is at handling a threat like this, and it's a whole new take on the creature. Godzilla didn't exist in that universe before this one showed up, and it's pretty good. I like it.
If only we had a recent example of an ineffective government response to a crisis that would really bring home the central themes of that movie and really make it, accessible for our modern times. But I can't think of anything.
People have to use their imagination to
really go back in time and think about it. Okay, so let's wrap this up. We're gonna head over to the arcade where we're gonna talk about a little video game called Street Fighter. We've talked about Street Fighter a lot. This is the third Street Fighter movie we've done, but we've never talked about it in our rebooted format. And also, this is specific to Street Fighter 2. Yes. So that's a bit of a change. Whereas the other things were kind of a mashup of everything.
Yeah, they go off of your knowledge of Street Fighter 2, but they really kind of took their own direction and went with it. And whereas this is an adaptation, albeit its own kind of loose take on it of Street Fighter 2 itself directly. And what'd you think?
Well, of the game?
We're
doing the game.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I got ahead of myself. I was so excited. Oh, the game. Okay. I mean, my God, the game. So yeah, I mean, the game, we've talked about it before, my love of it. I used to play this for money. I think Street Fighter 2 is like the equivalent of...
What do you mean you used to play this for money?
Well, I mean, not but I've been in tournaments and won cash playing.
Okay. I'd like to do a bit of a dive into that because, I thought initially you were at an arcade, and it was we all played this game for money, Ron. That was the only way to play it. What are you talking about?
I took quarters, and we used to do tournaments in Lansing and do little hustles. And throw money down.
Hustles, huh?
Yeah.
Ron, were you stealing middle schoolers like comic book money, like
Maybe.
while they naively chose Chun-Li, and you're like, I guess I'll just pick Guile.
Right. No, I consider myself pretty good at it at a time, but my buddies were all way above and beyond me. Like my friend Rob had a fight club that we would do, and we'd play Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 3, Street Fighter Alpha. We'd run through all the best games. But Street Fighter 2, to me, like, is right up there with chess as far as how well balanced it is. You know, it's one of the best fighting games to date. Like, nothing's really topped that. Mortal Kombat's fun for the shock value and the mythology. Tekken is kind of neat for 3D.
You know a little bit more about this because you played the games correctly. But my interpretation was always like Mortal Kombat, the original, always felt a little slower, like a little less responsive.
It's a
than
turtle
Street
game
Fighter.
for sure, especially 2. It's a lot of ducking and blocking and running the clock down and chipping away at health. Where I think Street Fighter did a better balance of just. I mean, Guile, his whole move set was designed to offset somebody jumping with a jump kick, and Ryu and Ken could play off of each other because they were so similar, obviously. But the fireballs could get people from crouching in a corner. Like, everything was designed to engage the player and get the fight in the middle and to duke it out. And they're always more challenging and intense, in my opinion, because like you had Tekken. I think the next game out of all of those that come out, although Virtua Fighter is another one that had a lot of skill-based, like that did kind of stay on its own. But my personal opinion, you had Street Fighter, a bunch of wannabes, and then Soul Calibur. I think Soul Calibur was the next game that come out years later that really felt like it was a balance of all these players that were really finely tuned. Mortal Kombat eventually got there. By the time they did Mortal Kombat 9, that's when they started really paying attention. I think it's just the decades of doing this. Ed Boon and his team.
Well, yeah. And Mortal Kombat always had
fast and
it always felt like Mortal Kombat's focus was on that, like, ending fatality, like shock value. Like, how do we?
That's what it is. It was all shock value. It was like, oh my god. I mean, it's funny because you look at it now and how quaint it is, but I can still go back to, holy cow, these graphics are amazing. Like, there was nothing else in the arcade that looked like that. And to punch a guy's head off and just that crowd reaction of everyone gathered around the machine and going nuts, And same for like Killer Instinct. I mean, that had fatalities, but that was more about like 30, 40 hit combos. But you had that interactivity. You had people putting quarters down, which was this unspoken, like, I'm next kind of rule set. And God, I just missed that,
I'm trying to think of a good. I know we're talking about Mortal Kombat now, and we'll switch back to Street Fighter. But I'm trying to think of a good analogy where it does seem like Mortal Kombat was taking itself seriously, and I would say argue maybe too seriously in those first couple games, trying to be this like playing into the ultra violence and stuff. And now
it's crazy to me that the first one was like made by 6 guys. It's such a small team that just got all their buddies together who are martial artists. So I think the making of it, they never took themselves seriously, but I think they took the mythology seriously, and it was really a big deal. But at the same time, you got a guy getting punched up in the air and gallons of blood flying out. Like, I think it was meant to be kind of hammy. Like, it's crazy that Congress at the time and everyone got so bent out of shape because it was never marketed toward children. But I think it's good that games got a ratings board and like games like this were branded as mature. Commercials weren't run during the Mario cartoon show at 6 p.m. Like it needed to be regulated more than it was. But I don't know. It was always a very silly game, despite being very serious. I mean, Mortal Kombat 2 with the babalities and the friendships and the Toasty from Dan Ford and I mean, all that stuff was very silly fun. I like it. Yeah. I don't know. But Street Fighter was a joke because Street Fighter 2 got endless iterations. I mean, I don't think Street Fighter 3 came out till 97 or 98. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, we got like Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Super Street Fighter 2. It became a joke. Everyone made fun of it. So by the time Street Fighter 3 came out, it was such an established series, and it's still the one I visit the most. I mean, Street Fighter 3, I think, is the pinnacle of that format. I mean, there's a lot of really good Street Fighters. I've played them all, but I think 3 Third Strike is my favorite. But I'll go back to 2 all the time.
That's interesting because arguably Street Fighter 2 is the most iconic.
Oh, definitely. Everyone knows Street Fighter 2. Like you could look at 2 or 3 of the characters in Street Fighter 3 and people go, what the hell game is that? But you show somebody Blanca, they're going to either know his name's Blanca or at least know that he can electrocute people and he barks, he's green. And
I feel like that name swapping thing they did in Street Fighter 2 where, M. Bison became Balrog or something like. I'm trying to they had a boxing character and they're like, we don't want to get sued because this is too close to is obviously
it's so
Mike
funny
Tyson.
To me, they never course corrected that. Yeah, because I think Vega's Balrog, and then
Bison's
Balrog
supposed to be Vega. And then Balrog's supposed to be Bison. Vega's supposed to be Balrog.
It's so
Bison's
silly.
supposed to be I don't know. Anyway, there's a whole it just shifts the name down and up. So we use this to talk a little bit about our experience. Street Fighter 2 is pretty much the only one I played. I've never been huge into fighting games. I just can never remember the combos that well. But I did play that arcade. Street Fighter 2 is so iconic. They had one at a grocery store next to my house. That's how pervasive that game was, where they're just some place you go to get cans of soup. They were like, we could also have an arcade here.
Sure.
And I just, the thing, looking back at it, the thing I really appreciated, and we've talked about this, but just the art design is so of that time, where it feels simultaneously so 90s, but also in that way that good character design kind of extends throughout history, where you can say this is good just throughout, if you think about iconic imagery, one of the best one, you think about Jurassic Park's kind of imagery, you think about some of the Jaws stuff, Star Wars,
sure,
trying to think of video games. It's Street Fighter, there's some with Mortal Kombat, Mario, Zelda, all these kind of Street Fighter, they don't necessarily have the same the iconography, but the design is and characterization is so iconic.
Street Fighter jumped out to me, and I think I talked about this on the original movie review we did, but it was the AMC Edgewood movie theater is where I saw it. And it was a guy playing Guile and Blanca were fighting in Brazil, but I had never seen video game sprites that big. So my jaw dropped. Oh my god, look how big these characters are. I was at home playing.
They are physically big. If you look at Mortal Kombat, they're taking up a vastly smaller percentage of the screen than the street. The Street Fighter characters, they're meant to crowd each other. It feels like it's supposed to be a street fight. I don't know if you knew. I don't know if you knew that based on the title, but
yeah. We could put these clues together, but the street fight game. But no, I was so used to Mario being the biggest character I played at home. So going to the arcade and seeing a character that big was whoa. Because there was at the time I was really into the game Narc. That might have come out afterwards. Do you remember that game? That was another very bloody one. So I think that was inspired by Mortal Kombat. That might have been a couple years later. But you were this you're in a blue motorcycle riding outfit. You had an Uzi, and your job was to shoot crackheads, for lack of a better.
Okay.
Drugged out character. You had to get drugs.
Oh, so a timeless classic is what you're saying.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right up there with Mario and Zelda. But no, the early '90s was the beginning of seeing these really big characters in these games, and a lot of that Mortal Kombat technology started to get into play. Pit Fighter was a version of that. I think Pit Fighter was first for doing that kind of physical capturing of actors. But yeah, Street Fighter's art style is really unique, and it stuck out for quite a while.
I was just thinking about talking about the way that the animation and those character designs are kind of pervasive. The movie Wreck-It Ralph? Like
Yeah.
they do a lot of like video game characters, and I think the only one or one of the few ones that isn't like from an older like Pixel era. You know, they've got like Qbert and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but is like Street Fighter. Like they have a couple of
Yeah.
them. It's like Zangief
Zangief,
and
Chun-Li,
Bison.
and Bison, I think, are in there.
And like to that level where they were trusting that those were recognizable characters to a wider
Sure.
audience. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I like Zangief in that one. Doesn't mean you're a bad guy.
Bad guy doesn't mean you're a bad guy. Yeah, that's a great movie. We should just talk about that movie.
Oh my god, we really should. That movie surprised me because they got it with that. That's why those references are there, because the people who made that game grew up playing Street Fighter. So like in their lexicon, it was Qbert and hey, we played Street Fighter also, and that history is there.
I would be interested to see. I don't know if anybody's done any write up on how they got like the rights to those character designs, because it feels like similar to how Who Framed Roger Rabbit got Warner Brothers and Disney cartoons all on the same screen. Like that's what like having all those characters interact feels like. It must have been like a monumental effort.
Yeah, expensive. Yeah.
So anything else? Any other thoughts about Street Fighter in general? Street Fighter 2 or?
Nope, I still play it on the Switch. You can get a Capcom collection on the Switch right now. That's all the best Street Fighter 2s compiled along with Street Fighter 3. I forget how many that are in there, but it's a really decent collection for $30. And if you have any interest in having it on the go, get that. They're arcade perfect, and I play that every time I scroll past it and forget I own it. I go, oh hell yeah, and I'll play Street Fighter 2 for a couple hours.
Do you have a favorite character?
You know, it's funny because Ryu is such a go-to, and he's like the first one I learned. But like my buddies, like especially like Rob, were really big on like not just picking one character. Like you weren't considered good in my crew of friends unless you were good with everybody. So we really played the hell out of everybody. And I think from a gameplay standpoint, Guile might be my favorite because I really like I was able to do combos with him before combos were really recognized in that series. Like I just like jumping in with him and doing his flash kick and the sonic boom, and his hair is ridiculous. So he just was kind of a favorite as a kid.
All right, so that's going to wrap up the arcade. Let's head into our third and final segment, the feature presentation. Okay, this movie, Ron, what a fun little treat.
A fun little treat, right?
I remember I think I
was...
was...
A palate cleanser, if you will.
Yeah. I was first introduced to this little film. Either you sent it or somebody sent it, like, just the Chun-Li... No, I think I just found it because I was looking for Street Fighter stuff for the other shows, where they had the fight scene between Chun-Li and Vega just on YouTube. Yeah. And I was watching, I was just like, this is... like legit, like this feels like a movie, like, and it's interesting, like it doesn't, the animation obviously isn't cheap, and there's good characterization going on.
Because I've owned this for years, but I haven't watched it in a long time. So firing it up, I kind of forgot, and I remember pausing it specifically to look at the running time, and 4 minutes and 50 seconds in, it had done more cinematically and story based than either of the two movies we've watched. Like all it is Ryu fighting Sagat, but the angles are great, the editing is great, the intrigue of what's happening. You don't need to know the characters to understand what's going on with the story in this one, and it kind of it doesn't care that you don't know. It steamrolls ahead with cameos, which, if you're to be negative, it kind of dances along that Mortal Kombat Annihilation of like, oh, look, Sector's here. Oh, Cyrax. But at the same time, though, I think it's a good movie. I think it's the best you can do adapting a game that, yes, has a story, but most people who play the game didn't know that story, you know what I mean? And I think given the context of it being Street Fighter 2, the animated movie, I think it connected all those dots really well. It was a little hokey, but it explains why Bison is looking for all these good fighters. He's trying to train this like team of cyborgs, and it made more sense than the only thing that's a bummer is revisiting. I'm forgetting it already. I just watched this, but Bison's got the line of like, "Yes, I remember her father falling down the elevator shaft." and the best part is Raul Julia in the Jean-Claude Van Damme one, where he's like, "For me, it was a Tuesday."
Yeah.
I mean, that movie is so terrible, but that's so wonderful.
I think I've said this before, but like, in the midst of a horrible movie is, I believe, one of the greatest scenes ever put on cinema. Like, I know it's partially because I was young when I watched it and it just left an indelible impression on me. Sure. But that's the first time I've ever seen someone be simultaneously so charming and cruel, effortlessly cruel which obviously I don't admire, but it leaves an impression on you.
But it transcends that movie. Like, as a villain,
that's what it is. It's like, this scene has no business in the rest of this movie.
This should have been in like Schindler's List, not Mortal Kombat. It's such a like.
And you also forget that like it's Raul Julia, but it's also Ming Na.
Ming Na Wen,
Ming Na Wen, who's also fantastic, like
absolutely, like, nice
amazing actors and she's like doing a great job of like restrained rage and like totally doing kind of a what feels like a like Princess Leia Jabba the Hutt kind of callback scene.
Oh, sure, good call.
I mean, they're in similar costumes and they're both hostages, so
yeah. It's funny with this, though. So I think this kind of addresses stuff that we've looked at with both of the movie, Chun-Li and Street Fighter, where, what would we do different? And this kind of puts the focus back where it belongs, even though it is a multifaceted cast and everyone's kind of the lead character, which is just how the game was designed. This one kind of puts this, like, Ryu ultimately, or Ryu is the protagonist, and it's his journey. And it does that while also servicing all these other characters. But it's interesting that ultimately Guile and Chun-Li, who are the leads of those other prospective movies, kind of take a back seat to everything. I mean, their interaction with the story is kind of a B plot in this, which is interesting.
And I'll just do a quick little recap before we go down the rabbit hole too quick. So this is I think this was released in 1994, right? Had a $6 million budget, made 16, which not bad for a little animated movie.
For a direct-to-video. I mean, this didn't come out in theaters here, so.
Yeah, exactly. And essentially it tells, the plot of Street Fighter 2 with some embellishments, I imagine. But basically, you have Ryu, who is a martial arts master, who's, kind of wandering the globe just looking for people to fight. After defeating Sagat, which is the end of Street Fighter 1. While at the same time, this new villain, M. Bison, is collecting fighters, sometimes by force, and for his is it Shadow Law, right? Shadow Law.
Well, see, it's Shadow Law
organization.
I thought it was Shadow Lu, but I think it's Shadow Law.
They say Shadow Law, which you have to say very quickly, or it just sounds like Shadow Law, like there's some sort of secret law books that people don't know about. But if you declare Shadow Law in like an American court, they have to declare you not guilty.
Parlay, Shadow Law.
Yeah, exactly. Perhaps
next time.
So yeah, this and Chun-Li and Guile are the main agents trying to stop Bison, who's trying to get Ryu because he has amazing fighting potential, apparently. And then Ken comes in because
his power levels are over 3,000.
Yeah,
it's amazing. It's like awesome.
It's like what,
90s anime. Wonderful.
What's a power level? What are you talking about? What does that mean?
3,297.
Yeah, and I was just like, I can tell by context that that's a lot, but you have given me no other situation to be like,
metachlorian count is huge.
He's got 78 parts per billion or whatever. And it's just like, is that a lot? We don't know what that means.
So many fun little unintentionally hilarious bits. Like every time Guile's in his car, I just cracked up. It's just his hair is brushed in the roof.
It was it was a absolute I don't know I don't know if baller is the right word, but it was some sort of stroke of genius to make Guile that big but put him in a small car. Like,
Yeah.
like you think, like, wouldn't Guile like maybe drive like a large truck or something?
You think
It's
a
like,
big
nope,
F-150 or
it's
something.
like he's driving a Mustang, like,
Yep.
or whatever. Like, and not even a especially large one. Like, this is the
No.
older models. They made them smaller, more compact, more maneuverable. But he clearly is the only one who can fit in that vehicle. Like, nobody else can sit next to him.
Is he is he and Chun-Li playful, or is it problematic in this day and age, their relationship? You know what I mean?
I think
It
there's a lot of
seems-
problematic things about Chun-Li in this movie.
Yeah, Chun-Li especially. Yeah, like everything with Vegas played off pretty creepy. Although that sequence is like engaging and like intense, and you know her fighting him off and whatnot. But just the overall context of everything with that is really like.
I mean, I think content warning, I'll say, for those who have triggered by any kind of sexual assault. This fight scene in particular is the most I don't want to I'm trying not to downplay it. See, that's what I was trying to avoid. It's the most aggressively sexual in a negatively aggressively sexual scene I've ever seen that didn't involve actual penetrative sex. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's really it's not like it's out of nowhere, because you know the bad guys are bad guys, but it just feels kind of unnecessary. Which is funny, because if you read the trivia, like the opening sequence has Sagat doing an official Muay Thai move on Ryu, and everyone said, "Oh, wait, whoa, too far. That's just too violent," and they dumped that scene. But then they keep a very problematic sexual assault in this movie.
I mean, it's an issue that gets leveled against us, I would say, especially, or a lot of creators and a lot of genre creators, but really just any I'm trying to parse it out, but it's really just a lot of different genres and television shows use sexual assault and rape as the shorthand for traumatic experiences to kind of cut through and make it very impactful, and it's ultimately just kind of cheapens it. And I know there's a lot of criticism, especially with like Game of Thrones, where it's just like, you're just, you know, anytime somebody needs to be shown as ultimately unredeemable or needs to go through a traumatic experience, you interject, you know, some sort of rape or sexual assault. And it's not only lazy, but it's also, you know, cheapens that experience by that being a shorthand. It's kind of gross. And I could see that criticism coming up a little bit in this movie, although 90% of it's just fighting. Like, there's to say that there's a plot is generous.
The only other part that's unintentionally hilarious is when Bison and his crew walks into the cockpit of their ship, and everyone's just, I have to keep my pecs clenched. And
it is one of those things where what we talked about with Monster Hunter is, in the context of street fighting, the video game, their clothes look normal, look like normal people, what normal people would wear. Everybody's wearing something ridiculous. But when they are asked to be put into a real world, for instance, in a car or in a business meeting or in a hospital, and they're like, "Why is your hair like that? Why are you wearing a cape? You're a secret agent. Why don't you have pants on? What is happening?"
What is happening? I guess it's funny, because I think we both had a positive experience with this, but we are kind of ragging on it right now. Those are just some of the issues. I would have liked to have seen like Chun-Li's wearing normal clothes until a particular fight scene, and then, you know, she doesn't just walk around in her outfit the whole time, you know. But
you can
at the
definitely
same time,
see
it works. Yeah, you know, like it does. It's not that distracting.
I mean, similar to Advent Children, this movie is made for people who like Street Fighter 2 and
Yes.
almost no one else.
No one else, yeah.
So
It
they are
doesn't worry
not
about you
going to like mince words. They're not going to put people in different costumes.
Even
They're not
the
going to
worst
tell you
movies-
what happened in Street Fighter 1 because you better fucking know, or else why are you watching this movie?
Even the worst movies we've covered would stop to go, oh, T-Hawk, he's this giant Indian. Like,
Yeah.
this movie doesn't explain this guy. He just shows up to fight Ken. And I like Ken and Ryu's relationship. I think that's a strong backbone of any adaptation that should not be ignored. And it's cool because, you know, like this one kind of goes into Ryu kind of stuffing down his power, and because they're able to track him by his ki, or, you know, how strong he is. And the games kind of go further into, you know, not spoiler, but a fun Easter egg in that scene right after he fights Fei Long. There's a guy selling like fruit and whatnot. And it's Akuma, who's known as Goki in Japan, and he is just like Ryu and Ken, except he's a demon. And there's storylines where he gets Ryu to turn the evil, kind of like in Star Wars, and we get evil Ryu because of him. And it's really interesting, you know. It gets into like demons and mythology, and
Yeah.
it's really cool stuff. But
I think the thing I appreciate about this movie that you'd brought up as an issue with the other ones was that it centers Ryu and as the main character, essentially, or at the very least as the focal point of the story, which he is in the game. Like, the story of the game is about Ken and Ryu, and to a lesser extent Ken, basically.
Yeah.
And I like that they made a point of doing that. They had these be the main characters. They didn't. And I think that's, you know, definitely because this is a Japanese movie made by Japanese people, as opposed to the Street Fighter movie, which was, I guess, Americans who just like,
Look
nope,
what
we
we
gotta
bought.
make
What is
Guile.
it?
We gotta make the American the main character. Like, okay.
we have a Belgian actor, but that's fine.
Yeah, well, you know, that was all the rage, is taking Europeans and pretending they're American.
Yeah.
Like, you remember True Lies with Arnold Schwarzenegger? It's just like,
Of course.
so I guess our headcanon is that he became a naturalized citizen and then joined the CIA, I guess.
agent. And my partner is Tom Arnold. that's less believable to me. Tom Arnold, toe to toe with Arnold.
We need to wrap this up, but the thing I find the most unbelievable about True Lies is Arnold Schwarzenegger's cover is that he's an accountant. And it's just like, what fucking accountant? Like,
Just completely ripped.
it just looks so ridiculous. Like, it is unbelievable that this giant man is an accountant. Like, wouldn't he break the keyboard as he's trying to type? Like, it's ridiculous.
The computer conference was really good.
It's also like,
process.
how does he keep that up? Like, does he do their taxes? Anyway, it doesn't
Well,
matter.
no, I mean, the movie kind of touches on that. I don't know about the taxes part, but, you know, when she calls him, you know, the CIA answers the phone like that company, and, you know, there's lots of layers to the ruse. That's a fun movie. I like
Anyway, this movie, let's talk about the ending a little bit, and then
Sure.
briefly touch on if we'd want to change anything. I think we've talked a little bit about changes, maybe making it a little bit more modern, less cartoony, giving less of the stereotypical kind of masculinity and femininity that kind of inhabit these kinds of things, like making everybody a little bit more well-rounded. I mean, they do with Ryu and Ken, but that's about it.
Yeah, that's about it.
Also, the ethnicity stereotypes aren't great either.
Some of the black characters are drawn very, like, Balrog is very offensive in this. Like, his eyes are always looking this way. And I guess you could play, he's a punch-drunk boxer, but
Yeah.
I was really put off by his portrayal, because he's another one of my favorite characters too. And I was like, ugh. But I would have liked to have seen Chun-Li and Guile, because ultimately Ryu and Ken never really had. I mean, ultimately Ryu versus M. Bison's kind of an iconic clash, but I guess my own headcanon, Ryu's journey, M. Bison's small potatoes. Like, his is grander than this Psycho Crusher lunatic, and that fight became Guile or Chun-Li's, you know, either or both. Theirs is tainted by revenge and tempered rather, and you know, so those play off of each other. So I would have liked to see it become more of a ensemble, and Ryu's journey ends with getting Ken back, and Guile and Chun-Li team up to take down M. Bison without weird, well, you're a girl, but you're okay, I guess. Drop all that. I think that would have made it a stronger movie.
Mm-hmm. So the very end. Well, the very end is Bison's back and he attacks Ryu, I guess. But at the climactic fight scene is eventually between Ken, Ryu, and M. Bison, and I understand story-wise why that makes sense. Where you've got this unification of these two who'd been separated, they're working together again. One had been hypnotized to fight the other one for a little while. They needed to have a cathartic moment of teamwork. But I always have a problem. In terms of my own kind of enjoyment of a film when two people are fighting one person and that's the only way they win, because it's just like, one, that's not how the game works. You can't fight two people, but then also, or as two people, but also two, like it's less of a triumph when you had to kind of double up, I guess. And I'm not explaining it well, but
no, I know what you're saying. Although I will be actually, for a second, and just say what I think is interesting about this movie. I mean, I don't know if this is necessarily said. IMDb did kind of touch on this, but I never really made the connection before. But it makes sense because this movie and its themes kind of established what would become the Street Fighter Alpha series, which is kind of moments before Street Fighter 2 game. And its art style kind of aligns more with this movie. And one of the cool things that happens either in the first or second one is you team up as Ryu and Ken to fight and Bison at the same time. And you're playing both characters as you're doing it, which is kind of cool. But that doesn't negate what you just said. That's completely, it takes the rug out from their conflict to have them both fighting this guy. Like, again, that's why I think Ryu and Ken shouldn't really have cared about M. Bison. Like, Ryu's only quest should have been to get his friend back, and they don't even deal with M. Bison, who ends up fighting Chun-Li, and she gets to redeem her father. Like, I think that's a strong story, and it's weird to just have her go like, oh, okay, they took them out for me. I don't know. It doesn't align with how her character's been built up. But as you see at the end, I mean, spoiler, but the end credit tag is Bison's back. They never actually vanquished him. So, a follow-up to this movie would probably seek, Guile and Chun-Li getting their revenge after all. So,
all right. It's too bad there isn't a follow-up to this movie, at least as far as I know.
Well, there's a TV series, but I've never watched it.
I forgot about that.
But it's like Street Fighter 2V or something like that. But I think it's a direct follow-up to this because you see Ken's daughter that he has once he marries Eliza. But I'm not familiar with it. At the time, like when this came out, like I was so big on singular stories. I know there's a term, and our producer Aaron's going to correct me on this, but I liked standalone anime. Like I didn't want to follow series. Like I wanted my Street Fighter the animated movie. I wanted my Ghost in the Shell, my Akira, and if you told me like, oh yeah, it's great, there's 78 episodes of this, I'm like, not gonna do that. But
yeah.
Street Fighter the movie Street Fighter 2 animated movie.
Out of,
Hadoukens.
I think we did Hadoukens for the last one, didn't we?
Oh yeah, we did.
So let's say out of 10 Guile haircuts, what are you gonna give this one?
There's some unintentional humor, and I find everything with Chun-Li really problematic today. Not saying I want to cancel the movie or anything, but I just think that really needs to look at. There should be a disclaimer about like, hey,
I mean, for the most part, it's not worse than anything that's happening now, unfortunately. But
that's true. Sadly true. Yeah. I give it 7 bristleheads out of 10. Like it's ultimately very fun. If you're a fan of the series, you're gonna love all the moments that are in it. Ryu and Ken are exactly how they should be portrayed cinematically. The fight choreography and the way things are put together is excellent. There's really fun, flashy representations of these larger than life video game characters. So it's not perfect, but it's damn good. It's probably the best Street Fighter adaptation it's easily the best Street Fighter adaptation we've covered. So
I'm gonna agree. I'm gonna say 7. I think for all the reasons you said, like if you like Street Fighter, it's great. If you like if you have a vague notion of Street Fighter and you like things like Dragon Ball Z, I think you're
Yeah.
also really going to like it, especially like the way that the choreography and the cinematography is done throughout the whole thing. Like
Those nice touches.
it's
Everyone
just
gets
really well
to
done. Yeah.
convey their signature moves. You know, Chun-Li does her spinning kick and Guile does his sonic. Like everyone's doing what they do in the games and very cleverly interwoven into their cinematography or choreography. And I don't know, it's just fun to appreciate as a fan. So
Yeah.
Love
All
to
right,
watch.
everyone. That's going to wrap up this episode. We hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, go tell your friends, write us a review, contact us on Facebook or Twitter. You can find us Pixel Theater, all those places. Subscribe to the podcast, and we will see you back here next time. Can't exactly remember what we're going to talk about, but I'm sure it's going to be fun. We'll see you later, everybody.
Hadouken!
This is a technical difficulties production.